to this meeting of the Cabinet for the second time. In addition to Cabinet members and other councillors present in the room, we also have some councillors joining our meeting remotely. I will now check that they can hear us and we them. Councillor Harvey.
Yes, I can see and hear you, Leader. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor support members, we have Councillor Hardwick.
Good afternoon, Leader. Yes, I can hear you clearly.
And Councillor Ginman.
Yes, indeed, I can hear and see you.
Thank you. So then going on to the group leaders or their representatives and scrutiny chairs, Councillor Terry James. I can't see him. I don't know whether he has sent apologies.
I don't believe I have apologies, Leader.
Okay. Then to Councillor Jonathan Lester.
Good afternoon. Can see and hear you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Councillor Bob Matthews is present in the room with us. Thank you, Bob, for coming in person. Councillor Trish Marsh is not. Councillor Tony Fagan, I think you're probably speaking for the Green Group.
Yes,
right?
I am. Good afternoon, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilding.
No, Councillor Ginman is speaking.
So Councillor Ginman will speak. Right, thank you. Councillor Howells is, I don't think, present. No. Councillor Alyssa Swinglehurst, I see you. Do you see us?
Oh, yep, I do. Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you. And Councillor Louis Stark sends his apologies, as does Councillor Balderson. I'll now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for the meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're not speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. I'll just check my own microphone, which might help with the recording. So procedure and etiquette for the meeting. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives where appropriate to provide views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will also ask scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee. Voting will be undertaken by a show of hands in the room. Only Cabinet members physically present in the room may vote. Apologies for absence. Have you had any apologies notified to you, Sarah?
Sorry, I've had apologies from Councillor Stark and Councillor Balderson and also from Councillor Hay.
Thank you very much. Declarations in interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interest for items on the agenda today? I see none. Thank you. Third item is minutes. To approve and sign the minutes of the meeting held on 27th of October. Do our Cabinet members content that the minutes are an accurate record?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 4, to receive any questions from members of the public. We have received 4 questions from members of the public for this meeting, and a response to each has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those members of the public who have submitted questions have the opportunity to submit a written supplementary or to join the meeting to ask their question live. I will now ask the clerk to confirm if a supplementary question is to be asked for each of these questions. First of all, a question from Mr. C. Wood.
Yes, I have a written supplementary, Leader, so I will put that on the screen and read it on.
Thank you. Would you like to read it?
The supplementary is to ensure that the disabled community are aware of what changes have been made to the pavement network in Herefordshire. can Herefordshire Council release details of what work has been completed on their website and social media platforms so it can be accessed by everyone who may require it?
Councillor Harrington.
Yes, we can do that. At the moment, we have only done 2 of 10 that we identified. The first 2 were the first 2 that Mr. Wood Cameron identified, and we've got another 8 which we've got on the go. So we'll make sure that's all clearly signposted once the work is done.
Thank you. The second question is from Mr. A. Thomas. Does he have a supplemental question?
No, I've not received any supplementary.
Thank you very much. The third item is from Judge Daniel Pierce Higgins. I wonder whether he has a supplemental question.
Yes, again, a written supplementary. His supplementary question is why delay? It has been 2.5 years since the damage was done. There is no alternative long-term solution to the provision of a Crown Court other than the restoration of the Shire Hall. The greater the delay, the greater the cost.
Councillor Davis, I suppose the debate is later on.
No, I was just going to thank Judge Pierce Higgins for his continued interest in the Shire Hall and for raising these really important questions. I can't say too much because we're about to have the debate about which option we're going to be going for, but hopefully the paper itself relays the reasoning why we are even considering a delay, along with not impacting the Shire Hall and disposing of it or doing the work now. So just want to thank him again for his continued support to have a Crown Court in Herefordshire.
Thank you. And the final one, Ms. Reid, you are with us this afternoon. I don't know whether you have a supplemental question. Oh, you've given it to
Yes,
already.
there is a supplementary question, and I have the text of it. The supplementary question is to please advise the Q1 working budget and outturn for 2022-23 for the Directorate, the children looked after, support for families, care proceedings, itemised if possible.
Oh, sorry. I'm just looking around. I'm not on the screen.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you for the question. We'll provide an answer. Thank you.
Can I make a comment? I have a longer question which has been censored effectively. And I think it's probably not a coincidence. I've also put in a public question, which is basically saying why aren't questions being fully answered? So I think it's a bit of a coincidence that that will be for this. Is it the Scrutiny Management Board? I've been given no explanation of why the question why the question in full isn't acceptable.
Very strictly speaking.
And I would like this to be.
Thank you. We'll.
I would like this to be minuted, but I would want
we'll take this
an explanation within 2 weeks of why.
I will ask the monitoring officers to look
why
into this.
it has been, why it has been.
Thank you, Ms. Reid.
And also, I have been told that it's clear. I noticed that Mr. Brown appears to be the monitoring officers. Well, I didn't hear him.
So I'll ask the monitoring officer to perhaps contact you, or you could contact them to have an explanation.
I would
Thank you very
want
much.
the monitoring officer to contact me and within 2 weeks. And I have actually.
Thank you.
And I would
Ms. Reid,
expect to reply because
you.
when I pointed out to her that family, when I emailed her.
Yeah.
And yourself pointing out to you that family group conferences legally should be carried out, or at least statutorily recommended, and if your own guidance they should be carried out. I haven't had a reply from my, and I'll shut up now.
Okay.
Chairman, through you, I confirm that on behalf of the monitoring officer, we will respond fully to the issues raised.
Yeah, I want a reply from Claire Porter, please.
Yeah.
I think, Ms. Reid, you have made some very valid points. We are looking at these family conferences. You'll note in the report, which is coming to this meeting, that there is reference to that. So we are moving in that direction. And thank you for your interest, and you will receive a response from the monitoring officer. Thank you. Councillor Howes has joined us. Welcome, Councillor Howes.
Apologies for being late, Chair. That was in a meeting till 2, and there's a flood by Aldi, Asda. It took me an hour to get here.
Thank you. We have one question from a councillor, Councillor Nigel Shaw. All those sorts of entertainment today. We have a question from Councillor Shaw. Does he have supplemental? Thank you very much. Yes, that's come up.
Yes, Councillor Shaw has a written supplementary question which is sent through. The supplementary question is, the council has made and plans to make significant investments in the infrastructure of the centre, and yet 3 years on, we have yet to see the business plan for the return on the initial investment. With such a lamentable level of increasing debt, now more than in 2020, and adding to the council's perilous revenue position, would the cabinet member not agree that the council is ill-suited as an operator of a retail shopping centre, and that any new administration would be advised to get it onto the market as one of its earliest priorities next year?
Yes, David.
Thank you. I would say thank you for the supplementary, but I'll take it with the contempt that he was sent, I suspect. First, I have a few points, 4 points really. Number one, the debt is not increasing, and it's unfair of you to insinuate that it is. We made the decision last year to take responsibility for management of the centre and finances from a private agency into Hoople. Since Hoople has taken over control of debt management, they have reduced rent debt by 239,767,000. Service charge debt from down by 66,000, and COVID debt reduction by 203,114.11. So a total reduction of £508,921.87. Number two, you keep referring to Maylord Orchards, the shopping centre, when you know from the interim plans and reason for purchase that this was not what we bought it for. We bought it as an opportunity came forward for us to purchase a leasehold for a strategic city centre site with scope for development and social value. We've set out firmly our plans for Maylord Orchards as a new library and adult community hub with retail, community and charitable premises surrounding it, created a much needed vibrancy to a key part of town. I recognise that for some people they may not have the vision to appreciate forward-thinking social value plans such as these, but I can assure you that they're there. My advice, number three, my advice to any new administration would be that we've demonstrated that managing the asset by Hoople has proven successful. We have a wonderful team based at the centre who are putting on events regularly to ensure that we increase the footfall within our city centre. We've attracted positive national attention for our ambitious modern library plans, and we've brought life back into a part of town that holds so many wonderful memories for Herefordians and visitors alike. So, new administration, whoever you may be, if you want to be progressive and care about the city centre, then you will see that managing the asset locally is the only option. And number four, thank you, Councillor Shaw, for the opportunity for me to talk again about Maylord Orchards. I can now legitimately raise a fantastic event they have this Sunday from 11 till 5, a Christmas extravaganza with a Christmas market, Western cider bar, face painting, balloon modelling and Enchanted Kingdom Christmas characters and live show between 4 till 5. I'll be there with my face painted, holding my model balloon in the cider tent. See you there.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I think I'd just like to mention at the moment there are a number of men, in particular around the room, with little white ribbons on them. These are to signify a sort of united approach against violence to women and young children. This is something which men should be certainly standing up against, and I and other cabinet members really support this particular project, this particular movement. It's so important in our society that violence like this is condemned. I'll move on now to item 6, which is a report from the Scrutiny Committee. It's a written report that's been submitted to this meeting. There's one report to present. Councillor Swinglehurst, would you like to introduce the recommendations from the committee
Thank you very much, Leader. Yeah, so the Healthcare Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee, which I chair, met on the 23rd of September to discuss the strategy for obesity in Herefordshire within the context of the government's 2020 National Obesity Strategy and the 2019 NHS long-term plan. The committee received an excellent report from the Director of Public Health, Matt Pearce, and had the benefit of an expert witness, Professor Paul Gately from Leeds University, whose input was invaluable. We found that the challenges around healthy weight are multifaceted, complex, and that therefore one of the primary recommendations is a whole systems approach in order to optimize outcomes. Obesity comes at a cost to the individual, their overall health, longevity, self-esteem, and quality of life, and at a cost to society, for instance, in the increasing incidence of diabetes. It's something that can be prevented. The council has a vital role in helping our residents to achieve a healthy weight. The committee made 15 recommendations in total for the Cabinet to consider. They include the development of a whole systems approach, a healthy school strategy to work with schools, key measures to gauge the success of any strategy, free access to gyms for our care leavers up to the age of 25, improved access to public rights of way, and a health impact assessment tool to use in determining planning applications. I commend all the recommendations to Cabinet and request that you provide an executive response and executive decisions and actions in respect of these for inclusion in the development of this policy area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swinglehurst. We won't be debating that today. We've received the recommendations, and yes, a report will be provided within 2 months, and hopefully more quickly than that. And I'd just like to thank the committee for deliberating on this really important issue. And as you say, it's particularly helpful having some expert witnesses who come in from outside and provide us with support and ideas. So thank you very much for that. And I will, the paper I have here says recommendations. First, that the recommendations on obesity in Herefordshire made by the Healthcare and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee at its meeting on the 23rd of September be noted. And second, that an executive response to the scrutiny recommendations be prepared for consideration by the Cabinet within 2 months. And I think probably I can't unilaterally decide this, it has to be a Cabinet decision. So do I have the support to adopt those recommendations to the committee? Thank you very much, Cabinet. So I'll move on now to item 7, which is the Children's Improvement Plan Transformation Funding, Tranche 2. And if I could pass over to my Cabinet colleague, Councillor Toynbee, very much.
Yes, thanks very much. Yes, so colleagues, as you'll remember, in March we agreed to release £11.5 million for the children's improvement work, and Cabinet requested that it be drawn down in 2 tranches. So the first tranche was drawn down from the Financial Resilience Reserve in April, and as was forecast then, it was pretty much fully spent by the end of last month. The second tranche was going to be drawn down by July, but as we all know, the Directorate has been very busy on many fronts since the spring, and of course we had Ofsted visit. So that's why we're addressing that today. When we made that decision in March, we also asked for an update on progress in our work with children before the second tranche of money is released. So we have that information today in Appendix A, and we also have frequent progress reports. And as you know, our DCS is always ready to answer any of your questions. As far as updating wider fellow members is concerned, we had 2 all-member briefings in October, which were very full and useful and interactive. We know that a huge amount of work is underway in the Directorate, and there are encouraging signs, I hope you agree, in the reports that we're receiving. I know that you're all pleased that caseloads for social workers are now more manageable, that families are being visited more frequently, that supervision has improved, and that good work is ongoing to support our social workers to develop their skills and their confidence, which is so important. We need to keep on investing to be sure that we stay on track and that our improvement is accelerated and sustained. We need to continue to invest in recruitment, supervision, support for newly qualified social workers, and making sure our IT and reporting systems are effective, better supporting our foster carers, and so on, just to name a few of our priorities. You can see in paragraph 34 a table with the anticipated spending allocation. As you know, this isn't definitive. We can't go into a huge amount of detail at this stage because we're still in the process of prioritising in collaboration with our DFE Commissioner. So there is a limit to how much detail we can provide at this stage, but the DCS will come back in January with an update for us. So by then we'll have a clearer picture of our priorities for next year, and that's set out in recommendation D. Recommendation C is in response to a request from a couple of you for the Cabinet members for Children and Families and for Finance and the Director of Resources to be consulted by the DCS in future in relation to decisions made about spending this money. So we've just had a budget. I had been hoping that we might be under a little less pressure by now, but we're not. As we know, councils of all colours around the country are extremely stressed and angry, not just councillors, officers as well, very stressed. Trying to save money. The fat's been cut. Now people are having to cut into the bone. And it's very disappointing that the government continues to refuse to support us and to invest in the services that people so desperately need. In Herefordshire, the Prime Minister kept promising to protect and prioritise the most vulnerable members of our society, but we're not seeing that. And poverty is rising at a really terrifying rate, and poverty is probably the #1 factor in families struggling to cope and possibly not being able to stay together. So it's a huge concern. And we're in the strange position of the less central government invests, the more we have to spend, but also the less we have. So it's a very difficult position. But we've got to do it. So I'm acutely aware of the financial situation we're in and of the pressure that all of your directorates are under. And I really, really appreciate the support, your support for the work that's underway in the Children's Directorate. So I trust you'll give this your approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tumby. So any questions or comments on this report? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tyler.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Quimby, for your update. We're all worried about budgets and finance and cuts and everything we have to do for our children's services. And the report is really welcome to update us on what progress has been done through the Children's Improvement Plan. I welcome the report. We have to do this. We have to sort of look after our children, and we have to invest, because if we don't, then we'll be in serious trouble. So I'd like to support this application.
One aspect of this report is that we don't have precise details. It says in paragraph 10, precise details of the expected allocation and spend are still in development. To an extent, it's a little bit unsatisfactory to come to the Cabinet with a huge ask for the amount of money. But we are in a position, I think, where we're waiting for the Children's Commissioner to make recommendations to go to some sort of concrete detail at this stage. I think would be just wouldn't be appropriate, because there might be changes as we're moving forward. But there must presumably be a reason why we want to have this report now at this stage rather than waiting another month. Presumably that's to enable us to continue the work which we've already started.
You're correct, Councillor Jeanette. So it's a continuation of additional resources and capacity that's currently in place, but with a plan to withdraw and reduce some of that additional capacity and resource in Q4, January to March, and increase investment or move some of the investment into supporting the voluntary and community sector to pick up more of the early help activity, and also to divert and shift some of the resources into our Edge of Care activity, including family group conference and extending the ECHO Edge of Care team. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Howes, I'll take your copy, your questions and comments, scrutiny committee chair. I will after governors have their say. I think I'll get to Councillor Harvey, who's remote. Well, it's not remote, she's on Zoom actually. I've described her some ways, but not remote. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. I'm very much in touch with what's going on, so I don't feel remote at all. Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the work that's been done since March in making progress on the improvement plan that was presented to us then. Clearly, their officers have been working dynamically since the Ofsted visit with the Commissioner and with other external advisors to identify where adjustments to our March plan may need to be made, and yet further adjustments may still be necessary. I welcome the progress and the improvements that are identified both in the report and the appendices to it. And I also welcome the beginning of some predictions in terms of the kind of downstream improvements that are expected and being looked for as indicators that we are making moves in the right direction in terms of improving the overall outcomes for children and families. In the way that the service is delivered. I look forward to more of that. Clearly, this is a huge investment that we're making this year on top of a significant investment last year and further investment that we need to plan for next year. It really is crucial, the number one priority for this council, that we get the very best value for money and improvements for our children and families from this funding, so that we can get the service back on track and we can make sure we have the right balance of investment for the future across all of our service areas. So I welcome the progress in this report. I thank the Director and his team and all staff in the not just in the Children's Directorate but across the council, who are providing support into children's in many different ways to help to deliver on this improvement plan. And thank you very much for the work that you've done to date.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Harvey. And it's interesting if you look at Appendix B to see some of the results which have been achieved so far. One thing which really strikes me, well, since we came into the administration, there have been many efforts looking at data. We've spent hours looking at committees at how the charts have gone up and down and in various mostly positive directions, but when it's turned out they haven't been quite so positive. So I've just wanted to highlight or ask a question about one element. The first chart on page 2 refers to the rate of CLA started for 10,000 children, and it's gone down from 58, I think, in June to 7 in October. That's a most fantastic result. But I do look at it with a little bit of questioning because it is such an extraordinary change. You're satisfied, Darryl, that is a sort of genuine. It's as far as you know, the results are that much different and that much improved.
Thank you. I know the historical scepticism and have shared that. I'm absolutely confident in that data. So there was a much higher rate before the summer. That was partly because we were still dealing with a lot of legacy drift and delay kind of cases, the stuff that was in pre-proceedings, waiting to go to court and the like. As Ofsted observed when they came and did their inspection in July, we had already started to put in place some mechanisms that weren't yet showing impact. They are now, so there are fewer children month on month coming into our care as a result of improved practice and increased management oversight. And I know already from regularly tracking this month's data, there's been a further decrease in November too, which I look forward to reporting in January.
So this isn't the result of more children being left out in the community?
No, there's certainly quality assurance and multi-agency audit activity is giving us a degree of assurance that we're managing that appropriately too.
Councillor Chance.
Thanks. Yes, I want to say, I broadly absolutely support this report, and I'm very happy to support the Crunch 2 commitment. It's very useful to have the initial data showing some difference that this funding has made over the past 6 months, although it is, early days, and recognising absolutely that transformation is a long process, and we're not going to see kind of, all of the results that we need immediately. But there are a couple of things outlined in Appendix B, I think, that are very encouraging. The data that you mentioned there, David, and the very significant reduction in caseload and the consequent for social workers, and the consequent increase in rapidity with which assessments are enabled to be done for children, which has got to be good for children and families. So I think that's a really significant thing that makes a practical difference. And also the really significant improvement in what we're able to manage data and understand what is going on within the service. I know that there's more work to be done there, but it's so crucial that we are able to understand as an authority what is going on, and so I think that's very encouraging. And I think it's absolutely right, really, that we've got a degree of flexibility in what we're approving here. We're not kind of signing off on exactly the detail, because we need to have that flexibility to be able to respond to the additional feedback that we're going to get from Erin Brazil and from our reflection. So I think that's useful and important. But yeah, I'm confident that we're going in the right direction with our transformation work, and thank you for everybody who's working so hard to put that into practice.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you for the report and for the action that seems to be happening now. A very fair question, but maybe it's not, maybe it's absolutely normal. But all of the reports that we see, my feelings about how they're written and what the language is like. There are some really complex things that we're talking about within these reports. I want to know, how are we conveying the messages of improvement and what we're doing, and how that will enable children to, not end up into the system, and how we're going to support them. How are we relaying those messages to the children and young people?
Thank you for the question. So that's a piece of work that's ongoing and in development at the minute, because that's something historically we've not been good at all. So we're doing quite a lot of work within the corporate parenting framework, so particularly focused on the children in our care and care experienced young people as part of the engagement strategy that the head of service is leading on. We're consulting with that group of young people to see how they would want us to communicate, whether it's through various social media platforms, some of which I'm not so familiar with, or through other media, and likewise through the listening to families approach, which we're kind of rolling out in the coming months, which is both a forum and a different practice model. So it's more working with families, focusing with. We're looking at how we use social media, Facebook, and then direct forums, so that we can share both some of what the progress that we're making, some of the initiatives we're introducing with families, but also make sure we keep that dialogue going, so that we listen to feedback from families.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I guess a plea, obviously, with my cabinet head on the culture, they're seeing some of the amazing results that people like Rural Media have had, and Powerhouse, enabling and empowering young people to talk through culture. Please do connect with our cultural services to see how they can help, because they are brilliant with getting this message.
Thank you very much. Well, I think I'll move now to group leaders, starting off with Councillor Lester.
Thank you very much. Yes, just to note before we I ask some questions about the actual report. just to query, the last time that the Children's Scrutiny Committee met was the 11th of October. There was supposed to be a meeting on the 1st of November, but that didn't take place. And so now there's a meeting, a provisional meeting scheduled for the 13th of December, but still doubt as to whether that's going ahead or not. Is the administration concerned that, you know, that there's delay in having these scrutiny meetings at such a critical time for the council? So that's one point we would like to raise. Next point is, we note the excellent question from Miss Reid about the reunification of families where that's appropriate, and I think that's a really important question to ask. But the answer that was given, I think, is a really good answer, and it's encouraging because it's really addressing what needs to happen. So we welcome the answer that was given to that question. But if you look at the report, and it's talking about all of the progress that needs to happen as listed in paragraph 21, it doesn't mention anything about the necessary work that needs to happen with reunification. And we're concerned that that is sort of not being a priority, one of those priorities that should be, if possible, achieved with equal force with all of these other focus. So really, we would like to see more emphasis on the improvement, focusing as well as all of the other key necessary points, focusing on reunification where possible, as the answer to the question has echoed. So that would be our ask, that there's more focus on that. The other question we have is on paragraph 22. It says about the extra monies that may need to be required for children's service transformation. It said that, but don't worry, any more monies that are coming forward would come through the budget process. How can we have faith in that statement when last time round we did the children's services budget, and yet still, after all of that analysis, they still had to come forward with extra funding? And then lastly, with Eleanor Brazil's work in reviewing the children's services, is this administration confident that children's services will remain with Herefordshire Council? It's talking like it is, and that's encouraging if that's the case, but do we think that that's really the case? And will we have a special meeting of council to discuss Eleanor Brazil's findings? Thank you.
Councillor Tybee.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. Good questions. I'll start with the last one because maybe Darryl would be better answering. I can't even remember what the first one was.
So the first one was around scrutiny meetings, and Councillor Howes might want to respond.
Yeah, yes, yeah, exactly. Yes, so as far as the future of our service is concerned, yes, as you say, the recommendation is our commissioners, and there are in the past, I think things used to be done in a very binary way. Either a council retains its services or it loses them, and nowadays there are far more options, and there's far more flexibility. So I think that's a positive thing.
The first question was about the lack of scrutiny committee meetings, and I think Jonathan was asking whether are we concerned about the lack of meetings? How would you like to answer that? But in part, anyway, the reasons for the scrutiny meeting not taking place. Next one due on the 13th of December.
I can't hear very well. I'm assuming you asked me to respond.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, yeah. Thank you. Yes, and my microphone isn't working, so I'll try and talk loudly so everybody can hear. Yeah, I will share Councillor Lester's concerns really. We've had to cancel several public scrutiny meetings during the year. One was first of the Queen's funeral, which is obviously understandable. But the November one was actually, we weren't ready with the reports we needed, which was a shame, but there was no sense in carrying on with reports that weren't available at the time. And we know some of the issues for those. I can definitely confirm, though, that the meeting on the 13th of December will happen, and we'll be reviewing the Ofsted improvement plan. I know it's not in the diary firmly yet, but it is going to happen. and we are planning for that. And we've requested a report, so we will be fully scrutinising the improvement plan. So I hope that answers your questions. Okay, Councillor Lester.
So thank you for the question, Councillor Lester. I'll certainly happy to take forward the point about greater emphasis on reunification in the update paper that comes in January. I think there's quite a lot of, for me at least, exciting developments happening at the minute, and a lot of people working on our strategy going forward. And I don't know whether I certainly I'm very confident that the budget that will come to council early in the new year will have an accurate reflection of the children's services position, because there's an awful lot of focus on that at the moment. I don't know whether Andrew Lookgrove will also want to comment on the process before.
Leader, in terms of the budget process, it's going to Scrutiny Management Board just after Christmas, once we have all the detail about the budget and the government settlement. But that form, I'm sure, will look very closely at all the budget proposals, and part of that examination will be to understand whether there's sufficiency in the measures being proposed.
Now the other questions, there's one question about paragraph 22, where there's reference to the budget process.
I think we just
that one. And we've answered the question about whether we're confident children's services will remain in council. Chief Executive, do you know anything about a special meeting of councillors once Eleanor Brazil's report is available?
As you know, Eleanor Brazil is, our Children's Commissioner, is working towards completing her report. We commence in the 12th of December, and we have some briefings with her that week with regards to her report. And her report is for the Minister, it's for government, and so remains confidential. What we are talking to the Commissioner about is an order early in the new year, once we're able to talk about the content of the report, before it goes into the public domain, and take all members through that, through a series of all member briefings, as we have done in a very open and transparent way so far. And what I'll be aiming to do over the next couple of weeks is confirm with members the arrangements and timescales for those briefings taking place, along with completion of Eleanor's report. So we should be providing more information over the next couple of weeks, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Got me napping there again, Leader. Leader, could I enlarge on the issue that you raised, if I may, Darrell? It concerns me because I've always been a strong believer that the best place for children is in a family environment. So I'm delighted to see the numbers dropping, but it concerns me greatly whether they were overcautious before or whether it's the opposite now. So can you assure us, Darrell, because there's one tremendous drop, that, you know, that's not the case, because there must be something changed in the system to have such a drastic change in numbers like that, which I welcome, but I mean, make sure that we're doing things right. So that's the one question, Leader. The other is, you've got additional management and supervisory capacity. Well, you know what I said many a time, the top word on top of there is supervision. So I'm glad that you've got that, but could you explain to us what difference having those extra management and what system or scheme have you got in place in a supervisory manner that's going to make sure there's better supervision within the department? Because as I said, like, you know, I think that's one of the most important things that we can have. And the third one, Leader, I was talking to a council worker, and I think one of the best things to find out what's not quite working right in the system, if you get a case and a file submitted that is obviously something wrong, do you ever pull that file out and go through it to see if you can establish what hasn't quite been picked up properly, and that's the reason for the fault in what's happening? Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. So in terms of the change in numbers, when one looks at the numbers of children coming into our care over the last 4 years, it's ebbed and flowed. So you can't see necessarily that we did something definite earlier this year that's made a big difference. It tends to dip during the summer holidays as well because referrals come down and all sorts of things. But I'm certainly confident that our practice is much better than it was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And that with my leadership team and across the service, we're much more focused than perhaps historically has been the case on trying to keep families together and building on family strengths. And we're going to bring forward proposals for a shift and change in our practice model next year, which will consolidate and build on that. And also we've addressed lots of the drift and delay that was in the system previously. So yeah, so I think that I hope answers the first point that you raised. In terms of the additional management and supervision capacity, that's made a big difference, coupled with getting our practitioners with manageable caseloads. It means that practitioners can build relationships with families, and it means that a practitioner who might be struggling with a complex set of dynamics within a family can talk to an experienced manager or supervisor and test out different scenarios, and managers who are then slightly detached from those dynamics and the emotion within the situation can provide kind of objective overview and challenge there. I think that's working very well for us. Many more of our practitioners now have regular supervision, both on a professional development point of view, as well as discussing cases. And we're very, very keen and focused that we won't be pulling that capacity away disproportionately next year. That will continue. Got a good group of supervising managers. We're going to be rolling out some training in the new year so that our managers and our case holding workers can make better access, better use of supervision going forward. And we're also quality assuring the supervision going on. So it's not just that we're ticking a box, it happens every month. We want to make sure that over time it's more reflective and has the impact that we want for children and families as well as for our practitioners. But ultimately we want to stay in Herefordshire. I think one of the key elements that we saw research about why social workers and managers stay with the local authorities, because they get good quality supervision and stability of leadership. In terms of the question, do we look at, so on a personal level, I certainly look at, so when things come across my desk, I go into Mosaic, I look at case files, I talk to practitioners and their managers to understand, well, what some of the challenges are, but also where we might have got things wrong. I'm also often the one that quite rightly has to apologise to families where we've got it wrong in the past as well. So my understanding of the case files is important to me. But certainly through our quality assurance practitioners, we do a lot of kind of learning reviews. So where something comes up as a complaint or an issue, we select a number of those, and sometimes either with our multi-agency partners or internally, we'll conduct learning reviews, and then we share that through the work of the principal social worker, so that we learn from issues and areas of the practice.
Okay.
I think there was a suggestion that the 10 cases that most worried you were going to go through with the cabinet member monthly or something like that. I don't know whether we've started that process, but it's a bit of a challenge, isn't it? Because we as councillors, we're not experts at this, but by looking at files, as Councillor Matthews was saying, by looking at files, you never know what you might be able to pick up. So I don't know whether we started that.
So we started having conversations about individual cases. We haven't got to a point yet of the kind of the 10 cases that per month that kind of rise to the top. That's partly because there's different criteria we can apply there. And again, Eleanor Brazil is helping us with that. But certainly in our, Councillor Toynbee and I have weekly catch-ups in terms of a one-to-one, and we have fortnightly cabinet portfolio review, which are a broad range of subjects. And in some cases, it's just.
Thank you. Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, we acknowledge the contents of the report. Good to see that work is progressing on the family group conferencing. It's definitely something that has worked well in Leeds, and many people have been pushing for us to sort of adopt the process here in Herefordshire. So the fact that it's included in this next tranche of money is promising. think the increased support for families that are experiencing difficulties is obviously to be welcomed, and hopefully this includes proper information about the processes that families will actually go through if they do have to go to court, and proper timing for pre-proceedings. And the other, one of the questions I had was the issue about the clinical psychologist. I see that there is in the next financial year, there are plans for clinical psychologists that weren't there previously. And I just wondered, is this a new position? Thank you.
So it's a position that was in the paper that we brought to Cabinet at the end of March. There's been a delay in being able to recruit for a variety of reasons and different challenges. So we're getting to the point now where the advert's out. We're about to interview for that post. So it's showing here as spend in tranche 2 rather than in tranche 1, because we weren't able to get the appointment made during tranche 1. It's going to be built into the base budget for next year. That again was part of the plan going forward, and that post is specifically focused on supporting our foster carers, managing some of the more challenging behaviours that some of them experience, and again helping us in our activity to reunify families where that's appropriate, but also to avoid placement breakdown.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. On behalf of Independence for Herefordshire, welcome this report. It's good to see progress. It's good to see that the foot is still on the accelerator. I'm minded today when looking at the Cabinet papers, and we've got this one coming up in a moment on Shire Hall, which basically shows if you fail to look after something over years, you get problems. And we've got the exact same here, where we've had a long history and a story of failing to look after these children in the way in which they should have been. The difference between children and buildings is at least buildings you can repair, but children's lives, you can't go back to that start one point. Therefore, it's absolutely paramount we get this right now as soon as possible and take it forwards. I was just a little bit confused, and Darryl, you might be able to help me here with in your Appendix B, page 29 on it, and Councillor Matthews slightly touched upon it. You're talking about the previous rise in the number of children in care has been stabilised, but you make the point, and I've never understood whether we've done the analysis or what the outcome of that analysis of why this county has so many in care. And you make the point the overall rate remains higher than in previous years and has been stabilised. But you're also saying that you're hoping to, and it then goes on and says, we hope to return more to the children to their families. But that means they've taken them into care in the first place. If you take them into care in the first place, then the rate is staying up. Why have we got a rate that is so high? What is it about this county that puts it at that level? And is that historical analysis that's been done on that actually still being carried forward in the same way, that the same reasons are there? Because if we don't tackle the reasons, we'll carry on having rates that are high. And I would love, I'd like to sort of understand that basis.
Okay, thank you for the question. There's a number of different rates in this answer, if you like. So there's the rate at which children come into care. That has reached, and that's that first chart on that table. That is significantly dropping, and I'm confident will continue to drop a little bit more yet. And then there's the rate that children leave our care, and then there's the overall rate of children in our care. So the overall rate of children in our care is the second graph on this table, which is currently 109 per 10,000. So the actual number of children in our care this week is 391. The rate at which children come into our care has been reducing, and in fact it's been reduced, apart from the rise we experienced last year, it's actually been reducing fairly steadily for the past 4 years. We did see a significant rise last year, particularly in the aftermath of the High Court judgment and other activity. On the net number of children in care, currently 391, has been pretty stable now. It's stayed fairly steady at around about 390, 395 for the 6 months, which actually means the the numbers coming in and then the numbers going out, they're not making a difference to the net at the minute. So we've seen fewer children coming into our care, but in fact, we're seeing relatively few children leave our care at the minute. So, and that's where I expect to see the change over the next 6 months particularly, and then in the latter part of next year, because our focus, having stabilised the rate coming in, is now on the children that are currently in our care. There are a number of those for whom the plan, quite rightly, is that with support, they are returned home. And that may be for a number of reasons. Some of that is because their family circumstances have changed, and that may now be the most safe and appropriate thing to happen. And it also may reflect a situation where a child might come into our care in a circumstance of crisis, something is happening in their family environment, which is a crisis, it's not safe at that time, but that with support for the family and for that child, we are able to return them home again. So that's our focus at the minute. So there are kind of 3 different metrics in here. The overall rate of children looked after is still higher than statistical neighbours, and I expect to see that continue to drop throughout next year. We've managed to focus successfully on reducing the numbers of children coming into our care, and we'll continue to do that. And through the work that we are planning to introduce over the coming months, in terms of an edge of care resource and a focus on those permanence plans, those return plans, I expect to see the numbers of children returning home increase. And again, that's a fairly typical scenario has been seen in other local authorities that have required significant improvement and then shift in focus and improvement in practice.
Thank you, Leader. If I may just come back on that. So can I ask, is there a standard categorization of the reasons for those children to come into care that would then allow a comparison county to county or authority to authority and ourselves internally to show? Because it begs the question then whether or not we could actually reduce by targeting those coming into care by other application, whether that's in education, housing, whatever it might be.
So it's a very good question, and there are a set of standard indicators, or set of standard indicators or categories, if you like, that are provided to us by the Department for Education, and each local authority responds to those annually through the annual census. So the majority of the difficulty is a fairly broad set of indicators.
Sure.
And each local authority can interpret them slightly differently. You then use your statistical neighbour averages and the like as comparisons. So there is work that we can do and that we are doing. The significant proportion of the children that come into our care do so as a consequence of a category that's broadly family dysfunction and or neglect. So that doesn't help us much in terms of those are 2 very broad categories. Neglect is endemic in most local authority areas. The reason for children's services involvements. We plan to do more deep dive into those in the spring and summer next year, particularly as we kind of clear the hump of some of the stuff we're doing at the minute. And I do believe that there's more that we can do to divert resources in future years that should have an impact on future numbers of children in our care. And that's by very much strengthening the resources available for early help and prevention. So again, addressing the causes of neglect at the point when they're starting to emerge. And again, we talked about child poverty and other factors in this debate. So there is, I think, more that we can do. And that's then for the council and for my teams to be a system enabler. So working with the community and voluntary sector, particularly to build capacity and resources that provide earlier family support.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that brings this discussion to an end. I think there's a lot of money involved here, and I think Darryl, you give comfort that we're directing the money in the right ways. You're very conscious of all the pressures on the council at the moment financially, and we look forward to January time. Looking forward to Elena Brazil's recommendation, and concepts will be after that. So I'd say continue the good work. We thank social workers for the work for the county making a difference to children. Thank you. So I'll put the recommendation to the vote. So the recommendations as set out in the report are the cabinet members.
Leader,
Excuse me, Chair, I thought you allowed me to make.
Oh, I'm sorry, councillor Howells, my apologies. Oh, right.
I'm here to remind you, thank you. A microphone as well. Before I go on, I'd just like to say I've noticed that the scrutiny support officer listened to the comment about the 30th of December not in the diary, but it is now. He's responded, so thanks for the question and thanks to the scrutiny officer for responding so quickly. Yeah, apologies again for being late. I think I'd be better off staying at home because of the weather. I'm more efficient as well. But as chair of Children's Scrutiny and realising this budget is key to ensuring success in our journey in the improvement plan, I thought it was important to be here in person. We welcome this budget in the first place as being really necessary that to make sure we deliver it on the plan and sufficient resources and a sizable budget. I think we were amongst the first to welcome that and say it was obviously so essential. So I'd like to also thank all those preparing the detail, working out and all the allocations. But I've got one particular point I want to raise, and in the meantime, my PC has gone to sleep. Keep asking how I can make it so it doesn't go to sleep within a few seconds, but can't get an answer. Yeah, it was about one particular issue on legal. And we've got that observation to make that the legal team is required, should be required to provide evidence to us that the impact on the extra funding is making to the improvement journey as far as legal concerned. And the reason we want to ask and make this request is that in supplementary agenda item 7 to our meeting on the May 2020, the legal team provided a suite of improvement intentions to scrutiny, which included a programme of training for the legal teams and social workers, which will be delivered under the previous tranche of funding, because it was recognised legal training was needed. I'll come back to in a second. And in their words, in seeking to ensure lessons learned are embedded, a programme of training and workshops will be facilitated. We not only need to provide these learning opportunities, we need to monitor how effective learning is put into practice by feedback. The quality work is being received by the legal team and also by the nature of inquiries sought in the legal team. And it's concluded by saying we're happy to provide further tracking evidence of this. This was from legal. And we have asked questions about this and recently and revealed that certainly now some of the training proposed will be happening despite having come to the end of the previous finance period. There will be reasons this we quite understand. And we want to discover what reasons they are. We've asked the question and still waiting the answer to ensure the improvement measures are proposed can be reasonably delivered. What we'd like to get is a clear understanding of what training is going to be delivered and what and when the target areas for training will be, and how importantly legal team confirm that they regard this, because they actually said they were looking for resources up to 2 years, subject to objective outcomes of improvement journeys and consistent delivery of good outcomes. And there was in the first tranche, I gather, some money for legal to put in place that programme. And we do acknowledge that obviously robust technical services are essential to officers and counsellors, and ensuring we have top quality legal advice, which was by their own evidence at the time, they agreed historically was weak in this area. So improvement in legal and children's services was recognised as being something necessary to do. And it's only now that it's actually happening. So what we do would like Cabinet to agree that it is vital we have a legal service which operates proactively, and also not only in terms of the process, but with compassion to invert legal action whenever possible. And we think some of the reasons for lack of compassion and lack of understanding by public have been because the legal team haven't necessarily been empathetic with public in making decisions, and that was recognised why the training was needed and included in the first tranche. We now understand, as I said, the steps are being taken, and we are naturally pleased to see this. However, to ensure that there is necessary confidence that the legal team improvement measures are being embedded, there does need to be transparency. And we would like Cabinet to support scrutiny in requesting that the initiatives taken and the issues encountered in their training to meet the requirements of legal fully delivering on their improvement plan. I report to children and young people speaking on a regular basis. Thank you.
I think, Councillor Howes, I'll ask Claire Porter to perhaps get in touch with you to give you some assurances in regard to that, whether Francis, you could pass that on to Claire. And I might ask Claire to also confirm that with the cabinet member, and so there's a bit of triangulation going on.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I confirm that Claire Porter is obviously aware, but I would just like to ensure that Cabinet agree that that's a sensible question for her to ask and support the requirement that legal training should be put in place as quickly as possible, given that it's a year ago and it hasn't actually happened. Thank you.
I suppose it's not entirely clear to me whether it's the
Chairman, on point of order.
Sorry.
Isn't it right and proper that Claire should be here with us today at this meeting? Why isn't she?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah,
Chair, can I assist? Hi, councillors. Francis Fernandez, I'm the Deputy Monitoring Officer acting on Claire's behalf. Claire can't make it for personal reasons. It would be inappropriate for me to discuss those in this meeting. Just so councillors are aware, I have listened very, very, very carefully to the comments made by the councillor. I will pick it up with Claire. We will have a detailed discussion about it, and we will consider and respond accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think I was going to suggest there are two elements to this training. One is the lawyers themselves, the training, and the other is the way the lawyers train social workers or give them understanding about what the legal issues are. And certainly I'm very keen that the communication between legal and this particular directorate is improved. It's a long-standing issue, I think, and I think the director is very aware of the need to do that, which is a way of having a better outcomes for the children, and better outcomes for the parents and everybody involved. Darrell, I don't know whether you wanted to comment on that.
Thank you, councillors. Just to say, certainly in my experience and in my time here, I think we've got a good, solid and strong relationship with our colleagues in legal services. I think that's much improved. We've had some very positive feedback from the family courts in recent weeks and months. I personally don't accept the premise that our solicitors act without empathy, but our solicitors act on instruction from social work managers, and I see some very, very good examples of work that we do, some good feedback from the courts. But we are doing some training at the minute on court skills. It's quite even for a director of children's services to go and stand before a judge, as I do on occasion, and that's still nerve-wracking, let alone for a less experienced social worker than myself. So we're doing quite a lot of work on court skills, and we'll be doing some court skills work in one of the courtrooms in the new year too. So there's quite a lot of work going on, and I have a lot of confidence in our legal team colleagues.
Yeah, thank you, Darrell. I think it's important here we give the Director of Law and Governance, together with the Deputy Monitoring Officer, the opportunity to have a conversation with yourself as Chair of Scrutiny, understand the issues that you've raised, give the opportunity to respond in full, and we go from there. I think that's the right and proper way of dealing with this.
Thank you.
Right, we apologies to you, Councillor Howard. So I'll now go to the recommendation. So are the recommendations set out in the report approved? Cabinet members, we show all in favour. Thank you very much. We'll move on, I think, now to item number 8. We talked about using some courts for training. Well, here is a possibility. So, Councillor Davies, over to you on this one.
Thank you, Leader. Firstly, I'd like to thank all of the officers for their work on this report, and also with the long-standing issues around property. Honestly, I wish I could say how hard our property team have worked since I've been here, and to try and get control of the assets in this council and get them to a point where we're making decisions based on evidence. So I would like to thank them for that, and I'd also like to thank members of the public, His Majesty's Court Service, and other related parties for their continued interest and support in the Shire Hall. Colleagues, you will be aware that this is not the first time that we've discussed the future of the Shire Hall following the collapse of the court ceiling. Since the collapse, we've undertaken much work to assess the building. My preference, since being Cabinet Member for Assets, has been to invest and celebrate in our civic buildings. My direction, with the support from Cabinet, was to explore the possibility of creating a civic hub at the Shire Hall, which includes the Crown Court, public participation meetings, civic council matters, youth meetings, and most excitingly for me, the reopening of the main hall to allow for music concerts to return. This concept has been taken forward, and we are now at stage 3 of RIBA, which is Royal Institute of British Architects design, where a decision has to be made. We have worked with His Majesty's Court and Tribunal Service to identify a space within Hereford City to provide a limited Crown Court function. We appreciate that this is less than satisfactory, but officers I know are working tirelessly on this temporary solution. It would, however, be irresponsible of us not to take this decision without seriously considering the financial pressure that Herefordshire Council and all public institutions are facing in the current financial crisis. The amount required for the improvements would be £7.5 million. Only this morning, Cabinet were in a meeting discussing next year's budget and faced with the grim reality of the potential savings that we will be faced with unless a financial rabbit comes out of the hat during the settlement from central government. This is not a Herefordshire Council thing, this is a national issue. In the last few weeks, both Hampshire and Kent Council, Conservative-led councils, have written to the Prime Minister to say that the risk of their councils going bankrupt within a year is a real possibility unless a financial package of support is given to local authorities in the wake of increased costs and inflation. This is why a second option has been put into the paper to await the decision of the Town Hall asset transfer and results of the corporate asset review. You'll see within the paper that you've got a number of options available to you. So roughly speaking for you, we've got the options of investing now in investing and retaining in the Shire Hall campus. We've got option 2, which is disposing of the Shire Hall by either lease or open market freehold, or to place the report on hold to allow for further investigations on potential future uses of the building. This will be linked to the corporate asset register and the issue and the planned asset transfer for the Town Hall. So you will see within the report that also we've got lots of options there. So if option 1 is chosen, no more than to be spent on 50,000, etc. But I won't run through the report. You will have all read this, and I know that we've all seen it during Cabinet briefing. That's all I really want to say about this, and I'm open to questions.
Right, Cabinet members. Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Davis. These iconic buildings are of significant local importance. Many Herefordians, like myself, have fond memories of their use. Sadly, for one reason or another, the maintenance of these buildings has led us to this point. And already mentioned by Councillor Davis, the final nail in the coffin was the courtroom ceiling falling down in 2020. It is quite shocking that the identified refurbishment works would be so significant. We do not have a quick fix. We've heard that it requires significant investment to repair these buildings, and at this point, we do not have it. To me, the investment in our children takes priority, obviously. Buildings will be there and children need our support. So the fact that this would cost so much money, I would support recommendation 3 from this report, that we don't discount it, but we look further into it, and hopefully investment in the future will come.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Any other contribution? Councillor Tyler.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Davis, for your report. It's very difficult when we've got so much money that we have to look at in our financial situation at the moment and our budgets, impending budgets. My worry, if we don't start looking at maintenance on the Shire Hall, it would just deteriorate even more. Option 3 is a preferable option to me. I'd rather start doing some works now, but we just haven't got that funding at the moment. But I couldn't not do anything for our iconic building that I used to go to as well as a young girl, and attended many different things there, not only in my council room but in my charity hat as well. It's a shame we have to put it on hold, but there's no way I can discount it from not having any maintenance put for this huge, wonderful building that we must protect for our future generations. So I'll be looking at option 3 in my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Harley.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Davis, to you and your officer team for all the hard work and thought and energy and effort that's been put into looking at options for the town hall. I've been privileged and grateful to have been able to have some sight of the work that's been done in developing plans for options for the future of the Shire Hall. And, you know, I personally am extremely excited at the potential that those designs and plans offer for providing a significant civic building of substance and importance right in the centre of our city. As Cabinet Member for Finance, I am only too aware of the pressures that we're facing in terms of in-year delivery and the uncertainties that we face in terms of our finances for the future. I'd love to have a financial rabbit pulled out of a hat, and I welcome very much the support from our judiciary, from the court service, from our High Sheriff, and from local people and stakeholder groups, the music service, choirs, and all the members of the public who appreciate the fantastic facility that the Shire Hall is for recreation as well as for civic use. We have too much uncertainty facing us right now to make the commitment that I would love us to be in a position to be able to make, to take those designs forward. I think it's excellent work that's been done, and it stands us in good stead that we have those designs ready and waiting to take forward. But I think the uncertainties we face, particularly as regards the funding needed to support the improvement in our children's services, means that it is a prudent move for us to pause at this point and just take stock and try and understand what the financial circumstances are and the competing pressures are that we're going to be facing over the next few months. We absolutely need to make sure that the building is protected and mothballed in a way that doesn't allow it to deteriorate. And I'm certain that with the care and attention that you and the officer team have, Councillor Davis, have given this matter to date, that that will be assured in the way that we undertake a pause on this. But I think doing that leaves all the options open to us. It gives us the opportunity and the hope to do what we have in our hearts and our heads intended for this building, and we just have to wait and take a measured view of what the future presents us with. So therefore I am also in favour of option number 3, that we just take a pause on this, we rule nothing out, and we leave ourselves open to take this project forward, hopefully, if we can be assured that the funding is secure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I think I really very little to add to what Councillor Davis and
Councillor Harvey has said, I think it's vitally important for us as a county that we have a judicial facility such as this in the county, not just for symbolic purposes, but because everybody has to travel a long way to go to Worcester. It's just not very convenient, particularly for people who are struggling to get access to justice. It's so much better if it's in Herefordshire. A comment's been made to me about the fact that because we don't have a Crown Court here in Herefordshire, people can't act as jurors anywhere because you have to be a juror within your jurisdiction. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. Not everybody wants to be a juror, but even so, you know, we have a public duty. We have a duty which has been Magna Carta days for a long time to be judged by our peers. And in this case, our peers aren't able to work in that judicial process. So there is some strength in that argument that the High Sheriff supports, I know. So I think we'll vote on it at the moment. I'm sure we are reluctant in not wanting to support immediate repairs and everything else that can be done. It's just financially not a possibility at the moment. But anybody who can provide any support for this, any pressure we can put on the court service to help us with this, we very much welcome discussions with the Police and Crime Commissioner, with the High Sheriff, with everybody else involved. And meanwhile, of course, I will mention the Town Hall, which we previously talked about, and we've kind of made an appeal to the public to help keep that building. There are two buildings within really close proximity to each other, and we really want to try to attract people to Herefordshire. And certainly I wouldn't want any funding for the county, for the Crown Court to be diverted from the Town Hall. Personally, I think we want to get one project up and running, and I know the time is ticking with that. So I think with no more ado, the recommendation then is that the Cabinet decide to place the report on hold. No, I must be the great leaders. Great leaders. Yeah. I didn't wait for too long. So, Councillor Lester.
Well, thank you. I mean, you can go ahead and vote if you like. I don't think anything I'm going to say is going to change your minds. But the point we would make is well, first of all, it's very tantalising to hear the plans that Councillor Davis was mentioning there. That sounded quite exciting, and we'd like to hear more details about that. Obviously, it's an iconic building as well as an incredibly important building for cultural reasons, for the justice system, and part of our heritage as a heritage asset for the whole county. So I think, you know, our view would be there's no question it has to be kept. And obviously, as a listed building and as a building of such importance, there's no question that it has to be renovated. This is the problem with listed buildings. They're there for in perpetuity, if that can be the case, and there will always be maintenance issues no matter what happens, what investment, and so that's just the reality. But it's a question of when, and you know, the Judge Pierce Higgins said, the longer you delay, the more the cost, and that is, I think, a critical point to make. But I think our view is obviously we have to retain the building. However, it's how you fund its restoration that's the key. So long as it's not being planned to be disposed of today, then we will have to watch this space, but with a caveat that the longer the delay, the more the cost. Thank you.
Councillor Lester, Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, it's a well-known fact, and Councillor Davis is aware. We, to Independents, have always strongly maintained that we should keep this historic building, and all councils over the years should be ashamed that we've allowed these historic buildings to deteriorate into the state that they are today. All right, putting it off is fine, but as someone just said, it's deteriorating more and the cost is going up. I warmly welcome the possibility with the High Sheriff and people with a group of the right people to see if we can raise some outside funds to get the project or the bulk of it up and running, that would be a tremendous gain. I could like Councillor Tyler, I can remember all the events that used to go on there years ago, and it was used for the school assembly music, and there was always events in there, and it was used by the public, and the court cases, of course. I've been punched and knocked about at assize cases and quarter cases, some little up and coming barristers. But I'm proud to say, only never lost one case there. So we're doing something right, folks. But no, I've got a lot of sympathy for this project, and we must do everything possible to make sure we get it back into some sorts of working order. And not only that, all the other buildings that need attention as well. And if we can get some help from outside with some of these influential people, and in the form of grants, that'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll just come back just to say thanks. My brain has just stopped working for some reason. Okay, so it isn't in the report, and maybe in hindsight it should have been in there, but actually that option 3 that we're discussing, that in that meantime that we do pursue other avenues of funding, because I think that's really important, that we know at the moment there are lots of opportunities from central government for last minute projects where, you know, we need to be ready. Well, we're at really stage 3, which means we're ready. So I've looked to colleagues such as Andrew Lovegrove and Sarah Jarrett to just be ready to identify if any of those kinds of grants come forward.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Fagan.
Yeah, the Greens acknowledge the importance of this building to Herefordshire and the need for us to retain it. So given the financial circumstances that we face, we see that there's no choice actually but to put any decisions on hold while we try and find alternative means of funding the refurbishment that's required. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chinman.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Leader. I made comment earlier about failure over years to look after something, and this is a classic example, isn't it? Nobody would wish to see this building in this condition. But I do not see, and we do not see as the independents of Herefordshire, how you can spend this money at the current time. I'm really grateful to all the work that's been done in looking at what can be done. I think that's absolutely vital. I think putting forward innovative ideas how to raise the money, yes, let's look at that and see if indeed we can do so. As we well know, the current government has a great penchant for providing money, which is hypothecated funding, directed, in other words, to particular projects, and you can't spend it elsewhere. So you can't suddenly wander off and repair a pothole when it's actually dedicated to putting planters in town or something of that nature. So it's really important that we perhaps ask and see whether there's any money that might be available to repair something of this quality, aided and abetted by local funding. I think that if you do adopt, and clearly those of us who are on the outside haven't had the opportunity to read the restricted papers because those are not available today. But if you do adopt option 3, there's 2 things that I would suggest. One is we do need to make sure there's some money to ensure that the property doesn't get worse. I mean, there may be some key things that need doing. We mustn't stop. We must try and stop deterioration if we can. The second is, if you're going to have a car park there available, it's the nearest one into town. It might be that it would be useful for disabled people to use it, and perhaps dedicate some of that parking for those who could then have quite a nice, easy access to that end of town. As just a suggestion. Thank you.
Very much. Just going to check. Have I asked everybody now? So I'll go to the recommendation. I think just noting that your point, Councillor Davis, that we need to be looking out for opportunities. And I think Councillor Gibbons' comment about disability area, I think that's a very interesting comment. So with those 2 caveats, I'll put the recommendation to the report are we all in favour of adopting recommendation 3, which is to placed the report on hold to allow further investigations on particular uses of the building, linked to the outcome of the corporate asset review and the outcome of the planned asset transfer of the town hall. Linked with recommended 3 is that the staff car park at the shower hall be reviewed to consider if it can be made available for public pay and display parking for 7 days a week until a formal decision on the future of the site is made. Delegated to authorities to give to the Director of Economy and Environment to take the necessary steps. So all those in favour, hands, thank you very much. All in favour. So I move then to the next item, which is item 9, Rural Prosperity Fund. The purpose of this is to seek Cabinet approval to submit the Rural Energy Prosperity Fund addendum to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund Investment Plan to Government on 30th of November. Government has allocated 1.705 billion of RPF, subject to the submission and approval of an addendum. This item starts on page 61 of the agenda pack, and I'll go to Councillor Jones. Jones asking her to introduce this item.
Thank you, Leader. Thanks, colleagues, and thanks to officer colleagues who have helped prepare this report, which is the outcome of process consultations with the Heritage and Sustainable Growth Strategy Board. So, as the Leader said, we've been allocated by central government £1.7 million of additional funding specifically for rural prosperity. This is in addition to the Shared Prosperity Fund funding that is for the county overall. The RPF Rural Prosperity Fund funding is capital funding only, and it's for 2 years starting in April 2023 through to March 25, and it's to replace the previous European Union funded LEADER and Rural Development Programme for England grant schemes for small businesses. To access this funding, we need to submit an addendum to our Shared Prosperity Fund investment plan, which we put in several months ago, still waiting to hear back from the government on that one. And we've got to put in this addendum by the 30th of November, which is why it's come to Cabinet today for hopefully approval. We've consulted widely with partners and the rural business community, including partners like the Rural Hub, the NFU, the CLA and so forth. And the Heritage and Sustainable Growth Strategy Board has been widely consulted in development of the addendum. So you'll recall that Sustainable Growth Strategy Board was set up. It was a condition actually of government levelling up and SPF funding, but we're also working with that wide group of stakeholders to develop our long-term economic development plans for the county as a whole. I'd like to thank everybody on that board and more widely who contributed to the development of the document. So through that consultation, we've identified 2 broad priorities: investment under the rural businesses and the rural communities, kind of headings of the RPF scheme, and so we're proposing continuation of some grant funding to supporting the growth of our micro and small businesses. In Herefordshire, that's 98% of the business base in Herefordshire is micro and small businesses, with a particular focus on issues, for example, around energy efficiency. Would be eligible for this funding, and we also propose to use this funding to support development of community infrastructure, active travel measures, visitor information and welcome infrastructure and so forth too. So the addendum sets this out in more detail, and I would like to warmly recommend it to colleagues. Hope you'll support it so that we can send it through to government. Thank you.
Any questions? I think it's great the consultation we've gone through, reaching out to lots of people. I know what the view of the local community is, so I'm really pleased with that. It's not a huge sum of money. I think we just got to be grateful for whatever comes from central government at the moment. Page 77, I thought most interesting with the different allocation of monies, and I'm hoping for start quite a lot of local interest, and small businesses and people who are aspiring to have businesses will take advantage of this funding. And I think I'll go straight away, if I may, to Councillor Lester. Sorry, I've lost my screen. Run out of power.
Before I do, Councillor Harvey's got a hand up, so you may want to go to her first.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. Yes, Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Lester, for giving way there. As Cabinet Member for Finance, as you would expect, I welcome this funding. I welcome this funding being targeted specifically at our rural areas, and I'm grateful for the level of engagement from communities and from rural businesses in helping to shape and direct the priority areas for this funding to be spent. That said, I feel I need to point out that this is significantly less money than Herefordshire was achieved under European funding through the Leader and other programmes over many years. Indeed, Herefordshire as a county was a net beneficiary in terms of inward investment compared to contributions to the European Union. And I really do hope that the government and our MPs on behalf of the county lobby hard to see that the all of the promises and wise and optimistic words that we heard about government matching at least the level of funding that has been received, not just in Herefordshire, but for all parts of the country, with the funding that was obtained through our membership of the European Union is actually delivered upon, and that particularly for Herefordshire, that we don't see an overall reduction in the level of inward investment as a consequence of the government's enthusiasm for Brexit. So I welcome this. I hope we're going to spend it wisely and well. But I do feel a little bit like Oliver Twist, needing to hold up my porridge bowl and say, please, sir, can we have some more?
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Can I move on to Councillor Lester now? Councillor Lester.
Thank you. And there are occasions in Cabinet where there are historic moments, and here's one of them, because I completely agree with Councillor Harvey on this issue. Of course, we agree with the focus on rural businesses. Absolutely. Herefordshire is made full of local businesses, and lots of those are rural in their location. So to focus this money on rural enterprise, that's we heartily agree with that. But yes, it is frustrating that this is less money than was before, and there's no pretending that it isn't. And so I think the emphasis here has to be on the fact that we need all the help and support we can get when we are focusing resources on rural enterprise. And obviously changes that have divided a nation with regard to the political situation obviously have reflected the outcomes, and here we are with funding that has been affected as a result. So ideally we would like to see more funding through this mechanism, and so that's why Councillor Harvey and I agree in this instance. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews, are you going to give us a memorable moment as well?
Well, I'll jump in the boat with Councillor Harvey and start going to France, I think. But I'm extremely disappointed. I'm not what you call the effort that's gone into getting this money, but it should have been considerably more. The rural area has been neglected for far too long. There's considerable poverty out there. They've got overheads now because they've got oil heating, they've got huge travel expenses to get to work and all the rest of it, having to park and cross the earth and what have you. So I would like to see this money. It mentions towns. Forget about towns. Towns have had a pretty good crack over the last few years in various ways. Look after the rural areas and the rural villages and make sure that's where it goes. As I say, I warmly welcome it, Leader. I would like to see a lot more to help to get some of the difficult situations in the rural areas addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Bacon.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the Greens also, we welcome this funding. We welcome any funding for Herefordshire, and particularly as the rural areas have been so badly hit by the sort of heating and transport and housing crisis. But like all our colleagues, we realise that actually the county needs more. And the other thing is that what we really hope is that the government can actually sort of deliver on its sort of promise of any funding in time, so that the money can be spent properly, instead of sort of last minute everything being sort of delayed and then suddenly we have to get this money spent within a very short time scale. So let's hope that the kind of mechanisms for delivery are working, but let's also just keep pushing for more funding for the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Newman.
Well, as we've had complete harmony up to now, I'm not going to change that position. Good to hear, good to see. Yes, let's have it. Totally agree with Councillor Harvey's point vis-a-vis leader funding and all the rest. So yes, I mean, I've already got businesses that have preparing their bid. They're saying, we're going to be oven ready for having a chance of getting at some of this money when it becomes available. So all good stuff, totally in favour of heading in that direction. One thing I do take, I would just question is in paragraph, I think it's 12 in here, where we keep on saying that the rural area is predominantly low skilled. I'm quite happy to see low wage economy with high proportion in lower value sectors, but actually the skills now that you require to farm, to manage in any of the agricultural sectors are no longer should be really looked at as low skills. They're an amazing level of skill requirement, and particularly in the increasingly precision farming basis, which is being asked for. So I totally accept the background that unfortunately it's never been particularly highly paid, but it has to be said now that it is increasing in payment because the skills are being appreciated. And I think we have to think of things in a slightly different way than the rather trite way that that's trotted out, and it usually, unfortunately, has been. So times have changed. Agriculture is now in a very different position, and hospitality also. So good to see, certainly supportive. We'll have bids in. I hope to see people at the Golden Valley Rural Business Hub Centre when we have this meeting coming up in the week after next. And we'll be preparing even more bids for the money now and the extra money that we're going to try and get from government. Thank you.
Councillor Jimman, I think I just want to recommend to the Cabinet. So the recommendations are set out in the report. Cabinet members, are you in favour? You. So the final item is the Q2 budget and performance, and the purpose of this is to review performance for Q2 and forecast budget outcomes for the year, and to provide assurance that progress has been made toward the delivery of the agreed revenue budget, service delivery targets, and the reasons for major variances or potential underperformance are understood and are being addressed to the Cabinet's satisfaction. This item starts on page 83 of the agenda pack, and I'll turn to Councillor Harvey to introduce this item.
And thank you, Leader. I would like to present the Q2 budget and performance report to Cabinet here today. This report provides assurance that progress has been made towards the delivery of the Council's agreed revenue budget and service delivery targets, and it details the reasons for the major variances or potential areas of underperformance, which are understood and are being addressed in a variety of ways. The forecast at Q2 for 2022-23 outturn shows a net overspend of 8.7 million, after the agreed use of earmarked reserves and the implementation of identified recovery plans, plan actions. The table at paragraph 3 to the report sets out the position by cabinet portfolio as at the end of September 2022, and further service detail is made available in Appendix A. The data presented shows where there are in-year plans to recover the forecast overspend and where some unbudgeted spend is also agreed as covered through planned use of council earmarked reserves. Whilst the impact of these one-off actions will reduce the forecast outturn for 2022-23 by £2.5 million to £8.7 million, it will be necessary to identify recurring savings to address the current cost pressures which carry on into future years. Now, I do not propose to underplay the seriousness of these variances, which are mostly down to unbudgeted residential care costs of 5.2 million and additional needs costs of 1.1 million, contributing to an overall forecast overspend of 7.2 million in our Children's Directorate. The provision of children's social care continues to face increased demand and unit cost pressures, and the historical level of overspend in this area in the financial years from 2017 through to today is noted in the table at paragraph 8. This is not a new problem for this council. Detailed work continues to be undertaken to reduce the number of high-cost placements and to implement tight controls on commissioning costs to achieve reductions in the overall placement costs the Directorate faces. As an administration, achieving improvement in children's services represents our #1 corporate priority. And to this end, I have requested that this Q2 report includes at paragraph 15 onwards a section reporting the in-year additional investment being made in support of the improvement plan for the service, an update of which has already been presented earlier in this meeting. This investment follows on from more than 5 million invested last year, comprises in-year 11.4 billion, with a further 4.5 million being built into the Directorate's base budget for next financial year for expected ongoing service transformation costs. Looking at our capital programme, this year's original 99 million capital budget has been revised to 65 million, and this forecast consists of 27 million carried forward from 2021-22, other approved movements of 1.6 million, and additional grants of 32 million. A summary breakdown is shown in the table at paragraph 18 to the report. Improvements in delivery of our capital programme continue with the assistance of our professional project management office. The backlog created by COVID and the ongoing delivery difficulties due to supply chain issues in the building industry comprise the primary reasons for the adjustments to the programme's delivery profile. Turning to savings and performance delivery, despite the incredibly difficult economic climate and unprecedented inflationary and demand-driven pressures facing our services, I would like to highlight that more than 90% of the in-year savings signed up to in the budget in the spring are either delivered already or on target for delivery as planned. Alternative savings are identified where the original savings are proving slow to bring forward. In addition, it's a testament to the dedication, commitment and sheer hard work of all of our staff that more than 80% of the projects and activities identified in this year's delivery plan are either delivered already or on track. I stand by my comments at October's full council as regards the aim to update the performance metrics and measures in time for the production of the Q3 report in the new year. In closing my remarks, I wish to reiterate the serious risks that spiralling service costs in children's services continue to present to the overall financial stability of this council. It is already clear that the only way to close the considerable gap created by in-year unbudgeted residential care and other costs will be with the use of our precious reserves. This is not a sustainable position for the Directorate, and it is not a sustainable position for this council. Consequently, I am grateful for the continued and committed support of all of our staff, of elected members, of external partners, families, and the wider public for the Directorate's crucial improvement plan, and for the many strands of work comprising this ongoing initiative. I now leave the floor open to Cabinet colleagues to highlight areas of special interest and detail for their particular portfolio areas within this report and its appendices. Thank you.
Right. Challenge for other Cabinet members. Councillor Crockett, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Harvey. These quarters seem to come by really quickly. I really would like to thank the officers that are dealing with this day in, day out. I do sound like a broken record. We have no more meat on this bone, and it is a really difficult time and hard decisions are made. But when you're looking at services for vulnerable people, we have to provide it. We do try to make ends meet, but there's always going to be that gap in the money. So thank you, Councillor Harvey, and a special big thank you to the officers.
Councillor Channing.
Thanks. I'd just like to respond to Liz's invitation to highlight a couple of things in my portfolio area. So economy and environment. On the economy side, as noted in the report, we have had sign-off from central government of Stronger Towns funding, which includes £22.4 million of projects, including several really excellent projects, some of which Gemma is leading on with, a fantastic touch with the enthusiasm for the redoing of the museum and putting the library in Maylords. We've talked about these previously in Cabinet, but it's really good to see progress going forward on those. As I've already referred to today, we're waiting for government to get back to us on levelling up fund proposals, shared prosperity fund proposals, which are both mentioned in here. So a lot of work has been done within the council, and we're waiting for government to confirm the support that was initially indicated to us. On the environment side, just recently, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we have signed off on the first 13 business cases to be funded from the Climate Reserve. These directly result from the work that was done by the Citizens Climate Assembly back in January, the allocation of additional funding to the Climate Reserve that was decision that was taken by full council at the last budget meeting, and that is really exciting, and it includes work, warm homes related work to do home energy audits and to train people in insulation skills and so forth. It includes work on school travel plans, other active travel work, and so that's all really positive and exciting, and there are more business cases being worked on relating to that. And then, as the report mentions, it's not kind of technically actually under my portfolio, but work is progressing very well on the wetland to tackle the phosphates issue, which remains a very, very high priority for us to get involved in, to the full extent of the limited powers that we have at the council to solve the phosphate problem, but we're working very hard on that. Thank you.
Councillor Davies.
Yes, just to highlight 2 things really. So following on from Councillor Chang's talk about strong towns and our 2 flagship projects that we've got going forward in that, I would also like to just have a little bit of a good news story, which is you'll see that with the Herefordshire Hoard, we were able to remove that from our capital budget because we were able to raise the money via public funds and from grants and from big donations. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of the public and everybody who donated to that cause. I can't wait for it to be in the museum. And the second thing is, it's just really to highlight what I was discussing earlier, which was about the real need from central government to come in and provide a financial report package. One of the highest increases is within my portfolio area, and that's relating to the waste contract. So something as simple as the cost of inflation has a huge impact on our contracts that are linked to inflation. And you'll also see within cultural services that we've had increasing cost in staff because of the pay awards. So I am a proud trade unionist and I will fight for even more pay for all of our service workers. But there needs to be a recognition from central government that it should be done by them, not by local government. So these are the impacts that they have, and then those are the unintended consequences that they have on our future budgets, such as the one we've just talked about with the Shire Hall. So it's just to highlight those little things that people don't think about and what a huge impact they have on our budgets.
Thank you, Leader. Just in relation to revenue, my portfolio is actually coming in slightly underspending for a change, which is good news. That's partly to do with grants we've had for parking, but also because parking has been performing better. It's also because we've got a fixed cost for our energy for our street lights, which has come back and been able to reward us. And also our street works and new roads team has been working very well. So we've got them coming in from that above, which we expected. But a little bit of good news, but I'm sure there's others to balance out.
Thank you. More? Okay, well, I'll go to the group leaders now. First of all, Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. To kick off a more specific question, we mentioned the delivery of the capital projects. Given the rise in inflation, that will no doubt impact on the cost of delivering these capital projects. Is it therefore necessary to reappraise all of these capital projects given the impact of inflation, which would obviously have on these projects? So does that need to be recalculated? And we reflect absolutely on the very seriousness of the financial situation that this council finds itself in. It is noted that just over £2 million is going to be used from reserves to mitigate some of the variance in the outturn. So our question really is, what's the plan? What's the plan to address the rest of the shortfall for this financial year, given that there's even greater challenges next financial year, as we all know? So what is the plan? Is it to use more reserves? And how much more reserves would this administration be prepared to use to address this specific issue? And secondly, if not reserves, what savings, or in other terms, what cuts are being proposed in order to meet the balancing objective of this budget? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. So, Councillor Harvey, are you able to answer those two?
I'll give it a go, and thank you, Councillor Lester, for the question. Yes, I mean the longer the levels of inflation and difficulties with supply of building materials continues, you're quite right. We will get less for more, and that's the same everywhere. We're doing the best that we can. It may be that in some instances it will be necessary to review the budgets that are against capital projects, and that's part of the challenge process that we'll be going through with the development of the budget for next financial year and the medium-term financial strategy, looking out beyond that. And there's an important part for members and for the scrutiny committees to play in that process. As far as cuts are concerned, you can see that there are a certain number of from the numbers in the table at paragraph 3. We do have some in-year actions that have been identified to make some contribution to the projected overspends. and those recovery programs are in train at the moment, being led by the leadership team and directors. In terms of plugging the in-year gap, the level of that gap presented to us and the level of inflationary pressures that the council is facing without any additional funding support from central government. And it's great that central government is finding ways to provide support to individual households at this time, and we welcome the part that we're able to play in helping to distribute those funds, and I commend the work of staff who've been involved in helping to make that happen, and the speed with which those funds have been able to be passed on to needy families and households. However, it's simply not feasible for a local authority to be able to absorb double-digit inflationary pressures or to make in-year savings sufficient to compensate for those as we go along within the financial year. So it will be necessary to plug the gap presented with reserves. I'm hoping that that gap will be able to be brought as narrow as possible with the action of staff and with the support of members. But it's a pressure and it's a difficulty that every member of cabinet and the entire leadership team are wrestling with on a daily basis. So I can't give you a definite figure, but we're just about to start a public consultation on the budget for the coming year. And we welcome the input of scrutiny and suggestions through scrutiny from all political groups on ideas for how to address the issues that we're facing. We don't consider we've got a monopoly on good ideas. So if your group has got suggestions for how to improve matters, then we're very willing to hear them.
Thank you. I'll pass now to Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Lester raised the issue I was going to raise. Looking at this, it's going to be extremely difficult at trying times ahead for all of us. And obviously, people I feel sorry for out there, the struggling public who could have extra burdens put on them in costs and different aspects. And so we must do everything to put our house in order. Obviously, Mr. Lovegrove done a few sleepless nights, and it and when I look around it, you just don't know what to say or where to go. But as you say, we have to give it some serious thought over the coming months. And Councillor Harrington, you're the only one with a green star. So at least I marked that up. At least you come in underspend. But it is, colleagues, extremely difficult times, and it's going to be extremely hard for everybody. And let's just work and do the best we can.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Yeah, Councillor Fagan.
Yes, thank you. I think Councillor Harvey did mention that there's going to be movement in getting a sort of more up-to-date report. I think looking at the kind of Q2 report now and sort of not having a clear picture of you know where we're going so close to the end of Q3, it sort of presents some difficulties, but it's obvious that the pressures of the year are absolutely on us, and I think that you know, everybody who is within budget or delivering services that need to be delivered needs to really be congratulated on continuing to do this in extremely difficult times. There are a couple of things I did want to just point out. Well, first of all, the making Herefordshire a sustainable food place, the work that's gone into that that is really great stuff, and that will certainly, if we can continue to build on that, you know, help a lot of the businesses in Herefordshire that have a fantastic sort of food product, and will certainly help our sort of tourism offer. And the other thing, in having just had the COP negotiations in Egypt, looking at our continued work on addressing climate change and mitigation for the environmental pressures on us, I think that you know, the council needs to really be congratulated on that, continuing to put sustainability at the top of the agenda. And obviously that is going to get more and more difficult, but it's essentially also more and more crucial as time goes on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. Finally, Councillor Ginman.
Yes, thank you very much, Leader. I think independents for Herefordshire are going to reflect the comments that have been made up to now. This is difficult. However you look at it, it doesn't matter what your colour or flavour of political party might be. But the facts of the matter are that this is an incredibly difficult situation at the moment. Trying to make the most efficient use of the monies that are available has to be the aim, and protecting the vulnerable has to also be that aim. Provision of service, as has been set out here, is trying to be maintained in a very difficult position. And I think one has to constantly monitor this, be aware of it. Thank you to Councillor Harvey for the care that she's giving to doing this, because it's very clear that this is a very difficult area and will be until some of the uncertainties are removed. I noted the comments in section 23 regarding Hopel. I do think it's important that we keep that in mind. Hopel still are a little bit behind in publishing their minutes of their meetings, but it's noticeable that there they are still consider themselves a viable entity. That is rather important because they supply the services to the council. So it is important that we understand what's happening there. And otherwise, I think it is a case of we look to the next period and actually fixing the budget, working together with all the groups on the council to try and achieve the best outcome we can, mindful that central government has now indicated we might be able to rise council tax to 5%, but that is not always something that we might wish to do. It might be something that we can do in order to meet the deficit, but it is with a weary heart that one does look at that as an outcome, given the difficulties we know that people are going to have in meeting all the costs of their particular households or businesses in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ginman. So I will put the recommendation to the vote. So the recommendation is the Cabinet, having reviewed the performance and financial forecast of the year 2022-23, as set out as appendices A to E, has not identified any additional actions to be considered to achieve future improvements. All those in favour of that recommendation? Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone for attending. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, the 15th of December 2022. There will be an additional meeting, I think, on the 12th of January, which is the number of items we have for the agenda. We have 8 items for the December meeting, which is too many, so we put an additional meeting in for January, which will probably be in an evening.